So, a lot of people that know me kind of know me as a Star Wars guy. Since I have such reputation, a number of people have asked me my thoughts on The Last Jedi, but at the time I either hadn't seen it or maybe they hadn't seen it and weren't able to discuss it. So, to save my poor wife from many hours of listening to me repeat the same conversation over and over again, I've decided to make this video. Yay! What I think may not be so different from what a lot of other people think on the internet, so if I don't give you any new information, apologize. So before we can talk about The Last Jedi, I feel like we need to talk about The Force Awakens, because that's where this really starts with the new trilogy. And a number of people asked me, well, Ben, what do you think about The Force Awakens? And my general response was, meh. It was okay, it's just that we've seen this movie before. I mean, this is basically just a rehashing of A New Hope, and people are like, what? Is it really that similar? Well, yeah, it's almost the same exact movie. Think I'm kidding? Think I'm exaggerating? Let's go through some of the glaring similarities between A New Hope and The Force Awakens that I noticed when I watched it. Information is given to a droid for safekeeping. Bad guys slaughter innocent desert people. Droid wandering in the desert. Hero/Force user happens upon droid with information that has been captured by local alien. Dressing as a stormtrooper to bust a prisoner out of jail and then blasting your way out. Bad guys have British accents.
Sir, they've taken out our turbo lasers.
The Rebel Alliance is too well equipped.
Use the ventral cannons.
Dangerous to your Starfleet, Commander.
Yes, sir. Bringing them online.
Fear will keep the local systems in line.
Crash landing on a desert planet. Wandering through the desert planet. Overlooking desert outpost. Heroes are assaulted by stormtroopers on said desert planet. Heroes escape the desert planet on the Millennium Falcon. Shooting TIE fighters with janky-looking Millennium Falcon blasters. Sith Lord loses his temper on subordinates. Also, Sith Lord holds dude by the neck and asks questions. Hiding in the Millennium Falcon. Han Solo smooth-talking his way out of confrontation with gangsters. Getting attacked by a weird tentacle monster. Blasting door locks. TIE fighters approach giant base. Don't mess with Chewie. Space checkers. Hangout spot for alien freaks. Alien band. Except, in A New Hope, it was kind of like jazzy and iconic, and in The Force Awakens, it was like late night with NPR, which I'm not dissing per se, but there it is. People snitching on the heroes. Hand-me-down lightsaber in a chest. Planet-destroying space station. Girl is taken for information. Good guy based on foresty planet. Friends reunite unexpectedly and need to catch up on stories. Sith Lord interrogates girl. Jedi mind-tricking stupid stormtrooper. Meeting to discuss how to blow up the planet-destroying space station. Sneaking around the enemy base, trying to escape. X-Wings assault the planet-destroying space station. Fat fighter pilot. Except this time, they let him live, which was nice. Good guys give play-by-play of the battle and count down the time to total destruction. Sabotaging the enemy base. Old guy from the previous trilogy confronts Sith Lord and allows himself to be killed. Hero/Force user yells, "No!" as it happens. Death of old guy leads to shootout and escape from the Sith Lord. Good guys fly X-Wings through a corridor to blow up the planet-destroying space station. Fleeing the space station in the Millennium Falcon. Space station makes a big boom. Heroes return with wounded. Leia comforts Force-using hero due to old guy from the previous trilogy passing away. C-3PO smacks R2-D2. And is annoying in general. Hooded Jedi Master Reveal. So there might even be some similarities that I missed, and there are some that I deliberately left out just because I felt like, whatever, they weren't like terribly egregious or anything like that. And you might even be saying to yourself, well, Ben, okay, some of those are a little nitpicky, right? I mean, maybe the connection's a little thinner than others, or maybe it's, some of them are paying homage to the previous trilogy and things like that. And you're right. I mean, some of those definitely are. The problem is that once that stack gets too high, it starts to feel kind of like too much, right? There's a point to where it's like, okay, I want to see some similarities. I want to see some, throwbacks and stuff like that. But once it gets to be like major plot points and they start stacking up over time. I mean, it gets to be like, it's a bit much. So this new trilogy of Star Wars movies seems to be following the same pattern that George Lucas had set out to create in the original trilogy, which is the first movie is just to introduce the characters and to introduce what's kind of going on, the world, all of those things. The second movie is meant to put the good guys in a possible situation. They're in dire straits and don't know how they're going to get out of it. And then the third movie, they get out of it. That's kind of the pattern. And so the Force Awakens was really supposed to be just to introduce the characters, just to introduce us to what's going on. So I was like, okay, I'll let that go. And there were some things that I liked about it. For one, most of the new characters are really fun. BB-8's great, Rey's great, Poe Dameron is great. He's like one of my favorite characters from this new trilogy, maybe one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time. It's a lot of fun. And they're all well acted. They do a great job with them, so those are great. The visuals are excellent, as always. I mean, Star Wars really has always been about the visuals. George Lucas is really a visual director, the same vein as like Peter Jackson. If you're younger and you look at the old original trilogies, you might think, wow, visually appealing? Yeah, I don't think so. Well, back at the time, yeah, that was like cutting edge, and everybody was like, whoa, we've never seen anything like this before. It's amazing. So Star Wars is continuing on that legacy. And of course, they have some fun throwbacks and, you know, some nostalgic moments, which are a lot of fun. So yeah, I like those things about The Force Awakens. So there are some things I also really did not like about The Force Awakens. First and foremost, as we've already talked about, it's obviously a big ripoff. I'm not a huge fan of Finn as a character. He's funny at times, I guess, but overall, he's not like super heroic, and he's kind of incompetent, and he's okay, I guess. The thing that I really did not like was Starkiller Base. The functionality of it is really what bothers me, because it's like, okay, this thing destroys planets. Okay, we've seen that before. Besides that, this thing shoots this laser beam, like, through space. What, light years in distance? In the original, the Death Star at least had to be near the planets it was trying to destroy. This thing just appears to be able to, like, destroy whatever planets it wants from wherever, which is kind of like, huh? Nobody saw at any point, like, this beam going through the universe and thought, like, hey guys, maybe we should, like, phone everybody at these planets that it seems to be going after. And not only that, but the fact that it's not just one beam, it actually branches off and destroys multiple planets at once. Oh, come on. The other thing about it is that it requires, like, taking the energy from a star to work and operate. So imagine if, like, we're in our solar system and all of a sudden the sun just goes out. You're kind of in trouble at that point, because you have no light and you have no heat, and you're gonna die. There's no indication that Starkiller Base can travel anywhere, that it's able to move. So how many stars are in this solar system that it's in? How close does it have to be to the star to actually absorb it? And everybody's watching both this energy come in from the sun and this energy beam go out, and they're standing right next to it, and wouldn't there be like a lot of radiation or something like that that would fry everybody? God. I probably shouldn't get too nitpicky about it, because yeah, sure, it's fantasy. But here's the thing, like with any fantasy movie, with any sci-fi movie, you come in with a certain level of suspension of disbelief, right? Because, okay, we're in this like magical world or universe or whatever, and things happen in this universe that normally don't happen. But at the same time, things need to make sense within the universe. And then last thing I really did not like about The Force Awakens is we saw nothing from Luke Skywalker. We didn't even get to hear him talk at the end. He just takes off his hood and there he is, and it's like, well, okay, we went through all this whole movie just to get to this. It's like, the other thing I'll say is that I didn't really care for was none of the original cast members, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, none of them seem like they really want to be in these movies. And I think it really shows on screen. Okay, so, but, you know, all those things aside, the movie was still a lot of fun, and I was willing to kind of give this one a lot of passes based on what the next two movies were going to be like. So this leads us to the question of The Last Jedi. Was it killer? Was it as good as I'd hoped it to be? Was it any of these things? I'm gonna say, I'm giving it a C. At this point, I'm probably bringing The Force Awakens down to a C as well. The Force Awakens left a lot of questions open that really needed to be answered, in my opinion. Okay, Rey is this Force-using character. How was she able to use the Force? Supreme Leader Snoke, like, we have no idea what's going on there. Where is he from? How did he get Kylo Ren to join him and things like that? There's a lot of questions that come up with that, and why did Han Solo basically kill himself or allow himself to die? Okay, so let's go into some of the things I really did not like about The Last Jedi. So for one of the things that's really unclear to me is how the Republic is so on the ropes. Like, really, it's the First Order that should be like the rebels, where they're kind of the underdogs, if you really think about it, and the Republic really should be the ones in charge. If you've seen the prequel trilogy, you know that the Republic, it's made of hundreds, if not thousands, of different planets. And as we saw in The Force Awakens, Starkiller Base only destroyed 5 planets. 5. Okay, and yet their whole fleet is gone, like their whole army. They stored all of their resources on just these 5 planets. They didn't bother to spread them out at all or anything like that. I think it's just poor writing, in my opinion. But I get it in that they have to portray them as being the guys, the underdogs on the run to make it more dramatic. But it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I did not like that at all. Rey's ability to use the Force still goes completely unexplained. She doesn't even really get any training in this movie. And yet she's like a Jedi Master who's able to take on Kylo Ren, who's this super powerful Jedi, who even Luke Skywalker was afraid of for being so powerful. And yet she goes toe-to-toe with him and has no problem with that, and she's never had any training. Like, it just, come on, man. It's a bit of a stretch. It's too convenient. Another thing I really don't like is the Force. It's getting to be too much. They're really doing too many things with it. In the original trilogy, and even in the prequel trilogy, people who can use the Force, they're strong in combat. They use lightsabers. They're good pilots. They can see the future. They can lift and levitate things with their minds. Like, these are, there's a kind of a limited range of things that they can do. In this movie, we're seeing them do all kinds of stuff, from Princess Leia being shot into space and flying back and being totally fine, to Luke making this weird astral projection of himself or something like that when he's not even on that planet. I mean, like, light years away on a different planet. Like, it's just too much. Supreme Leader Snoke somehow connecting Kylo and Rey, even though he's never even seen Rey. And, well, it's the Force. Well, the Force explains it. It's like, they're really pushing that too far, in my opinion. The idea of Snoke connecting Rey and Kylo, in the beginning of the movie, he talks about how he has very little faith in Kylo's ability to like, do anything. And then when Rey comes up, he's like, haha, I knew it. I had full confidence that when I connected you two, that he would bring you to me and kill you. And it's like, well, which is it, man? And then the fact that he can somehow reach out and connect her to Kylo with the Force, and yet he doesn't know where she is, or I don't know, man. Really confusing. And again, they just kind of, well, it's the Force. No, we need more than that. They introduced a new character in this movie, and her name was Rose, and I was not a big fan of her. This is having some pretty lazy writing, I think. She talks about this device that they suspect is on Supreme Leader Snoke's ship, and she's never, like, really seen it or knows how it works, but yet she knows how to destroy it or dismantle it or make it stop working or something like that. Again, it's very convenient. But Rose in general, she's just bland. Star Wars really gets its strength from its colorful characters, and she does not fit the bill, in my opinion. Finn, yeah, same sort of deal. Like, in Force Awakens, he's like this incompetent, unheroic character who kind of redeems himself at the end, and this movie, he's the same exact character. Like, he apparently has learned nothing from the previous film, but this time, when he tries to redeem himself, that chance is taken away from him. He has his opportunity to destroy this cannon that's going to destroy the rebel base, and he's going to basically do a suicide run to stop it, but then Rose comes and, like, stops him, crashes into his ship, and they, whatever. It was a shame. I was actually kind of like, okay, at least they're killing him off, and they're giving him, like, a heroic death, in which case, like, it gives you a certain level of respect for Finn. They didn't allow that, and now I still just don't like Finn. The other thing this is another thing that really just makes no sense. So in the movie, Finn just makes a beeline straight for this cannon. I mean, he just goes straight the entire time, while everybody else, like, branches off and curves off and goes another way. Somehow he's making just a straight line for this cannon, yet Rosie somehow managed to curve around and still get here faster than Finn, which just, again, makes no sense. It's just really bad writing is what it comes down to. Another thing I wasn't a big fan of were the porgs. Okay, they're really cute, sure, but they add literally nothing to the movie at all. There's no reason for them to be there at all. The only reason they're in there is for merchandising opportunities, which is another hallmark of Star Wars. Ding. You really are wondering, like, hey, what's the significance of these guys? Why are they in here? And then you realize, oh, there was no significance at all. Great. Luke is overly cranky in this movie, and I guess that does harken back to Yoda, because Yoda was pretty cranky in Empire Strikes Back as well. So I guess that kind of makes sense. Apparently, when you become a Jedi Master, you just get really cranky. And from what I understand, I don't think Mark Hamill even wanted to take the character that direction. I think he was kind of upset with the direction they gave for Luke Skywalker, but so not really his fault, I don't think. But another thing is kind of weird. Poe Dameron routinely in this movie disobeys orders, commits treason / mutiny, and his leaders are all like, "Oh, that Poe guy, he's a good dude." Yeah, his actions lead to the death of hundreds of people, and he's the reason why they can't make a stand against Supreme Leader Snoke's onslaught. Not a real good move, and I mean, he doesn't seem to face any real repercussions for it, and the fact that the leadership is just like, at the end they're like, "You're the new leader now." It's just, I guess, he learned some lessons, hopefully, so maybe that's what they're trying to imagine, but at the same time, you're like, no military would ever do that. They would just throw him in jail, and that would be the end of it. It's goodbye, Poe. The casino world, this is what seems to draw a lot of criticism from people, and rightly so. It's like this weird side plot, like this liberation of these kangaroo horse creatures. I don't even know what they're called. Really doesn't need to be there. It totally detracts from the reason why they're supposed to be there, and Rose and Finn don't even do a good job with it. Again, they just demonstrate that they're completely incompetent. But at the end of the whole scene, they lead these creatures into, I guess, like the woods, which really is not that far from where they were at. And they feel like, oh, well, we did a really good thing. Like, good job. Pat ourselves on the back here. Like, these animals aren't terribly far from where you started. They're just going to pick them up again and put them right back where they were. Or they're going to find new ones to bring in. Like, you haven't done anything. Stop patting yourself on the back. Your whole resistance movement is at stake here, and they're gonna get killed, and you're just like, oh, the horsies. That's what it's all about. Blah. I also don't really care for this notion, oh, as the light gets powerful, the dark rises up to get equally powerful. It's kind of interesting in a certain sense in explaining like why the First Order is there and why like there seems to be this constant civil war going on in the universe, but it kind of really takes away from it a lot. It really gives you a mixed feelings. You want to see these Jedi characters. You want to see these guys like battling evil and doing good and all that stuff. But the thing you start to realize is, oh, the more Jedi characters we have in this universe, the more evil things that are going to rise up against them. And so for the future of Star Wars, like you get this mixed feeling. It's just going to ruin it, I feel. Like, I'm never going to just be able to appreciate the Jedi. I'm always going to think, well, I really shouldn't want there to be any Jedi in this universe because they just lead to bad things. One of the things I also really don't like is, so obviously they bring closure to Snoke's life, but they don't bring any closure to anything about Snoke. Like, we don't know where he's from. We don't know how he came to power. We don't know how he was able to influence Kylo Ren and all of these things. Like, nothing is given about him at all. Now, you might be saying, well, Ben, Emperor Palpatine, I mean, the original trilogy, before we had the prequels, we knew nothing about him either, and hey, nobody cared. It was still a great trilogy. Well, yeah, but here's the thing. In the original trilogy, the Emperor is talked about in the first movie. We don't see him at all. He's just this mysterious character. And then in The Empire Strikes Back, we hear him talked about, and we only see him for a few seconds on the screen, maybe like a minute tops. And it's like a weird distorted image. We still don't really get a good look at him. And then by the third movie, we start seeing him more, and then there's this crescendo where he's, reveals himself to Luke, and then they basically battle it out and all that stuff. In the original trilogy, the Emperor was really shrouded in mystery, and by the time you actually got to see him, you were just like, yeah, we're finally getting a look at the Emperor, and whoa, he's trying to convert Luke to the dark side. Like, there's a lot more plot elements to it and things like that. In this new trilogy, we see Snoke a lot, actually. And granted, he's in holographic form, but we get a good look at him. He says a lot. He has a lot of involvement. I don't know, man. I feel like you need to have some kind of explanation. Like, we know where all the other characters are coming from, to a certain degree anyway. Finn, we know, was in the First Order, who's a defector. Rey is just this random girl on some desert planet who gets caught up in all of this. Poe is a resistance fighter, and at least we have some kind of idea of, like, okay, where are these guys coming from? Snoke, he's a main character. He's a very pivotal character, and I don't know. We're just to assume, like, okay, there he is, and ugh. The bombing run that happens at the beginning of the movie in space. There's no gravity in space. And they don't show any propulsion systems on the bomb, so you really scratch your head like, wait a minute, how are these bombs getting down to that spacecraft? One of the things that was fun to see was this partnership between Kylo Ren and Rey. My big disappointment was that it only lasts a couple minutes. It would have been awesome to see them like join forces, whether she goes bad or he goes good. It didn't matter to me. That whole weird conversation with Maz. What are the odds that they call her and she's in a firefight with some Union guys or whatever? And why would she be talking at a time where she's in a firefight? It's just unnecessary, in my opinion. One of the things about the movie is that they incorporate light speed as a weapon, more or less. So one of the spaceships basically rams into some of the other spaceships using light speed. And the real question is, like, why didn't anybody think of that before? Like, why didn't they, like, create some automated ships that could, like, blow up the Death Star or Starkiller Base just by going through light speed through them? Like, I don't know. That seems a little too convenient that they just incorporated that, and we've never seen that before. It starts to make you, again, just think that it's lazy writing. They're just making up whatever they want at this point. Right prior to the scene where she uses the light speed to ram the ship into the other ships, we see Finn and Rose, and they're captured, and they're just about to be executed. And Captain Phasma is right next to them, and they're surrounded by like a whole garrison of stormtroopers, and literally the axe is about to come down. I think it was a hammer or something, so I don't even know. Physical axe or figurative axe. Doesn't matter. Just as they're about to kill them, that's when Admiral What's-Her-Face light speeds through the ship, and I gotta say too, like the lights, that scene was pretty cool to watch. It was kind of like a whoa. At the moment, you're like, wow, this is really cool. And then you start to think about it, you're like, wait a minute, how does this make any sense? But I digress. And all of a sudden, everybody around them is dead, except for, of course, Finn and Rose. And they just kind of wake up in rubble, and they're like, oh, why is everybody dead but us? Lucky, I guess. The Force!
Good screaming, everybody.
And just as that happens, all of a sudden, Captain Phasma basically walks around the corner, and she has a whole nother garrison of stormtroopers, and it's like, wait, what? How did everybody dies except for Finn and Rosie and Phasma, and then Phasma, who was right next to them, ends up way over there, and now she's bringing a bunch of stormtroopers, and they just had this giant impact. Like, is this really their first priority, is to kill these two? Shouldn't they be, like, escaping this crumbling ship or something? Whatever. So they come back, and this leads me to my next point that I did not like. Captain Phasma is a complete waste. Like, there's no reason for her to be in these movies either, other than she looks really cool and she can sell some merchandise. That is it. Like, we get no opportunity to see her do anything cool. She's supposed to be this really tough fighter or whatever, and she gets totally bested by the guy who used to be the janitor. It's okay that she died, I'm not upset about that, but the fact that she did nothing, that they did not like cut her loose at all to really like bring in some heavy duty action, that is a huge missed opportunity and very disappointing. The part at the end where Luke just kind of vanishes into the Force at the end, like, why? Obi-Wan Kenobi, we saw him vanish, but he got hit by a lightsaber and he had like a plan. Yoda vanished because he was super old and, 900 years old, and that'll pretty much do it. It's unclear as to why Luke had to disappear or what caused it. I don't know, man. That was not very clear to me and very disappointing as well. One of the other things that they kind of mess around with This idea that there's no real difference between the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force, how they're just pretty much like opposite sides of the same coin. And we see that with Benicio del Toro's character when he's basically highlighting that these casino guys are selling weapons to the First Order and to the Resistance. And he's like, oh, you think these people are real bad, but guess what? It's a little more complicated than that. And there's some elements that are kind of fun about that, but I don't buy into this notion of nihilism. Like, you know, there's no objective good and there's no objective bad. Like, of course there is. And I don't know, hopefully they'll do something in the next movie to kind of rebut that a little bit, that says no, there is good and we should fight for the good and not for the bad. We'll see if that happens or not. Some of the things that I was really looking forward to that we did not see, they totally dropped the ball on these. In The Force Awakens, Kylo Ren is referred to by Snoke as like the leader of the Knights of Ren or something like that. And I think they're supposed to be like the Royal Guard or whatever that's in The Last Jedi that protects Snoke. I was really hoping that we would see some more action from them. I was hoping that they would be like some real Force users that are under Kylo Ren and kick some serious butt. We did get to see them fight a bit, but I don't know. It wasn't as impressive as I was hoping it would be. The other thing that I think everybody was really disappointed with, I was really disappointed by this. We didn't see Luke Skywalker do anything in these new movies. He did nothing. The only thing he did was make this weird hologram projection of himself appear to fool everybody, and he didn't even actually fight. Like, oh, are you kidding me? The idea is that even in the original trilogy, Luke Skywalker is supposed to be like one of the most powerful Force users ever, and he's supposed to be just like the most powerful guy in the universe. I mean, I spent the entire movie of The Force Awakens waiting to see Luke Skywalker like do some real action, and all we got was a look. And then you think, okay, well, the next movie we should really see some awesome stuff, and no, just grumpy guy milking weird creatures on the beach. I don't know, it was such a shame. The other thing that really goes completely unexplained is Rey. After watching The Force Awakens, where they make no attempt to try to explain Rey at all in terms of why she can use the Force and why she's so good at using the Force, and you know, you start to think, well, she must be related to the Skywalkers or maybe some other Jedi. I think in the subtitles from The Force Awakens, there's a scene where it's when she's having her vision and she's seeing her family fly off, and if you read the subtitles, it says Obi-Wan says something, and you're like, whoa, is she related to Obi-Wan Kenobi? That would be awesome. So you think like, okay, there's going to be some kind of connection, there's going to be some kind of tie-in, there's going to be some kind of explanation as to why she is so good at the Force, and no, they provide no kind of explanation whatsoever. They're just like, yep, she's just a random person who can just use the Force out of nowhere, and she's awesome at it, and there you go. And it's like, ugh, very lazy, poor writing. That's all it is. That's all you can say about it, and it's a shame. And it might not even be the writer's fault entirely. Like, maybe they're forced to make some changes due to bigwigs or something. I don't know. But now, The Last Jedi was not a total loss. It was still, I still had a good time watching it for the most part. One thing that I liked about it a lot was that it did feel significantly different from The Empire Strikes Back. Going into this movie and considering what happened with The Force Awakens, I was really nervous that they were just going to, again, do the same thing they did. Take Empire Strikes Back, rehash it a little bit, and dump it out. Because, I mean, think about it. In this movie, going into it, we knew that Rey was going to meet Luke Skywalker, and we assumed that he was going to train her, and that's pretty much the plot of Empire Strikes Back, where Luke goes and sees Yoda and gets trained. And they did draw from some other points from the other movies, but overall, it felt like its own thing, which was great. The visuals, again, it's a hallmark of Star Wars. They're always great. I particularly liked the Salt Planet. How they explained that it was a salt planet was a little, like, forced, but it was awesome seeing, like, the white turn red as the speeders are going through and the explosions were going off. Like, it was just really cool. The acting was very good overall. I really don't have any complaints with any of the acting except for the original cast members, which were Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill. But again, I just felt like they just weren't terribly into this movie. Whether it was just they felt like Star Wars really should have just been left alone, or maybe they just really didn't like the direction that things were going, or I don't know. I don't know why, but I just get the impression that they didn't really care for it. And so I feel like that really came through on the screen for me. Kylo and Rey teaming up was so cool for the whole minute and a half that it happened. Wish it would have lasted a little longer, but, it was fun while it lasted. The other thing that I do like is that I do feel like this movie actually had like a real kind of moral to the story. There was something for the characters to learn, and there's something for us all to take away, I feel. You have all these young characters like Rey, like Finn, like Poe Dameron. The thing is that they think they're pretty wise, they think they're pretty competent, and they act on their impulses, and these things lead to detriments. Instead of listening to the advice of older and wiser people, they're young and stupid and they do what they do. I don't know if that's meant to be like a critique of like social justice warriors or millennials or just young people in general, but it's pretty valid, I would say. I think there are a lot of people, especially young people. Young people are just very excited. They have a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and they want to change the world, but they don't usually know the best way to go about doing it. And so a lot of times they just get misguided and misdirected, and they end up actually causing more damage than good. That is very true, and that's a very good point. So in that regard, I actually really like the message of The Last Jedi, because I think there's some wisdom in that, frankly. So I think that's a good moral to the story, something that young people should really take to heart, myself included. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Long enough for you? Let me know what you think. If there's anything I missed, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them down below. Or, if you're gonna see me and you want to talk to me further about it, you can. I don't know what else I'm going to tell you at this point, but whatever. Come talk to me. I'll see you. All right? Peace.